The moment NASA's Lunar Rover sent back images that looked nothing like the dusty plains we've seen for decades, scientists around the world held their breath because what flashed across the monitor was not just another crater, not just another patch of dark volcanic rock, but something so strange, so perfectly out of place that the entire control room fell silent. And at the very center of that silence was a deep, hollow opening that looked like a doorway carved into the moon itself, a black void cutting into the surface where no natural shadow should have been. And as the rover's camera adjusted, zooming closer with each pixel sharpening, the strange structure revealed itself not as a simple cave, but as a tunnel entrance straight-edged, smooth, almost geometric in form, as if some intelligence had shaped it long before humans had even taken their first steps on Earth. And the more the rover crawled forward, the more the mystery deepened, because the walls around the entrance shimmered faintly under lunar sunlight, reflecting a metallic sheen as though stone had fused with something artificial, a mixture of natural rock and hidden engineering. Something ancient yet intact, and whispers began spreading across the NASA command center, whispers of secret construction, whispers of alien origin, whispers that maybe, just maybe, the moon was never as lifeless as we believed. And while the officials tried to maintain their composure, every heartbeat in that room carried the weight of knowing they were witnessing something that could rewrite human history. Because this was not just a tunnel in the dirt, it was a corridor into the unknown, a place that seemed to call out silently, daring us to step inside, and the rover, obedient to its coded commands, moved inch by inch, kicking up gray dust as it approached, its mechanical wheels pressing into a surface that almost seemed too soft, like the ground itself had been tampered with. And as the shadow of the opening swallowed its camera lens, the signal flickered for a split second, just long enough to send panic through the engineers, before stabilizing again to reveal something impossible. The tunnel did not end a few meters in like expected, it stretched further, deeper, endlessly, like a highway hidden beneath the crust of the moon. And faint glowing patterns lined the inner walls, spirals, curves, shapes no geologist could explain. Symbols that didn't belong to erosion or volcanic activity, but to hands, or something like hands that had carved them with purpose. And those glowing patterns pulsed faintly, almost alive, as though responding to the rover's presence. And in that moment, every scientist in the room understood this was no mere discovery. This was an invitation, a message written in stone and light. A message waiting for humanity to read, but fear gripped their minds as well. Because if there was a tunnel, there had to be a builder. And if there was a builder, where were they now? And what would happen if we disturbed their secrets? And yet curiosity, that unstoppable force that had driven humankind from caves to the stars, was stronger than fear. So they pressed the commands, guiding the rover further in, deeper into the shadows, its lights cutting across the eerie walls that curved smoothly as if engineered to guide something or someone down into hidden depths. And suddenly, about 30 meters in, the floor changed, no longer the loose dust of the surface, but polished. Slabs that clicked faintly as the rover's wheels rolled across them, slabs laid in a pattern too precise to be random, each one glowing faintly at the edges as though feeding on some unknown energy. And data poured back to Earth showing magnetic fields fluctuating, strange radiation signatures unlike anything recorded before. And voices in the room began rising, scientists demanding analysis, engineers insisting on caution, military observers silently noting every detail, because if this was an ancient structure, it could also be a weapon, or a vault, or a doorway to something that Earth might not be ready for. And while the rover moved further down, cameras catching glimpses of chambers branching off to the side, dark openings that led deeper still, the world outside had no idea of what was happening. because NASA kept the feed classified, hidden from the public eye, leaving only a few chosen minds to witness the unfolding of a truth too dangerous for headlines. And yet, even among them, there were those who felt the weight of history pressing down, urging them to speak, urging them to tell the world that the moon was not just a rock circling Earth, but a library of mysteries, a place where someone or something had left behind structures that defied every law of geology, every assumption of human history. And as the rover crawled on, faint tremors vibrated through its sensors, vibrations that seemed to echo not from the movement of its own wheels but from deep below, like machinery humming far beneath the surface. Machinery that had been sleeping, waiting, dreaming under lunar rock for ages untold. And now, disturbed by the touch of a machine from Earth, it was beginning to stir, to awaken. And the scientists watching knew that every second carried the risk of triggering something they could not control, but also the promise of answers humanity had sought for centuries. Answers about whether we are alone, answers about the ancient sky, answers about the very origin of the moon itself. And so, despite trembling hands and pounding hearts, they commanded the rover deeper into the tunnel, deeper into the mystery that waited in silence, glowing softly as though holding its breath for the first visitor in millennia, the first witness to a secret buried not under oceans or deserts, but under the very body that lit our night skies, a secret so massive, so unexplainable, that once revealed, it could never be forgotten. And so the rover rolled further, each meter carrying it closer to the unknown, closer to the truth. Return was the only word echoing in the commander's mind as the rover's transmission abruptly cut off, leaving NASA's control room in stunned silence. And at that moment, the silence wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the suffocating weight of something unknown pressing down on every scientist watching the live feed. Because deep within the shadows of the moon, beneath layers of regolith and hidden craters, the rover had stumbled into something no one was prepared for, a tunnel that seemed carved with impossible precision, its entrance shaped almost like an ancient doorway half buried under lunar dust. And while the world had always been told that the moon was barren, lifeless, and without mystery, the grainy images now suggested otherwise, for the smooth walls of the tunnel reflected the rover's lights in strange patterns as though metallic. Veins were running through stone, and in that eerie glow, symbols began to appear, markings that didn't belong to any natural geological formation. Symbols that looked older than human language itself, curling lines and spirals that seemed to pulse faintly as the rover drew closer, and suddenly the signal flickered back online for a few seconds. Just long enough for a frame to transmit to Earth, showing the interior sloping downward into blackness, as though the moon itself was hollow and hiding secrets within. And while many in the room whispered theories, some claiming ancient alien bases, others suspecting remnants of long-forgotten missions, there was no denying the terror in their eyes, because what they were seeing was rewriting history in real time. The very history of human existence and our place in the cosmos. And as engineers scrambled to stabilize the connection, strange distortions filled the audio, whispers layered under static, voices too faint to decipher but too deliberate to dismiss as mere interference. And when one of the linguists at NASA replayed the noise at slower speeds, the chilling realization dawned that the whispers formed repeating patterns, almost like chants, repeating a sequence that matched the symbols etched into the tunnel walls. And though the rover was designed for exploration, its descent into the unknown began to feel less like a mission and more like trespassing into forbidden territory. For every meter it advanced, the air in mission control grew heavier, a sense that something ancient was watching through the rover's unblinking camera lens. Something patient and powerful that had been waiting beneath the moon for longer than humanity had existed. And when the rover's headlights caught a sudden glimmer deeper in the shaft, it revealed smooth surfaces too symmetrical to be natural. Panels embedded in rock as if an entire underground structure had been built and later buried, panels that hummed faintly, vibrating as if responding to the rover's presence, and one engineer gasped as his monitor showed a spike in unknown frequencies being broadcast directly from the tunnel, almost as if the moon itself had awakened and was sending signals back to Earth. And though officials wanted to cut the feed to avoid public panic, the rover continued onward automatically, its sensors overwhelmed by commands not from Earth, but seemingly redirected from the very structure it was approaching. And just before the feed froze again, the camera caught a glimpse of a chamber.